What's up? This is Professor Wergeles. Had some problems recording a lecture in class, so I'm going to re-record it after class. We're going to be working on the Class 20 AJAX, so download the zip and put it up on your server. Okay, so I usually will download the code, unzip it on my local machine, and then I will drag and drop that to my server. Okay, I've created a lectures directory inside my public HTML directory. Created a lectures directory, that way it's easy to open up from the browser. So if you type your domain and then /lectures, you should be able to see it pop up here. Okay, instead of having to type AJAX space during class, you can type lectures and then click on AJAX. Okay, so we're going to be working on the first one. If you open up the AJAX directory, we'll be in AJAX Basics, and we're going to be in number 1, basics.html. If I open this code up, this is what you're going to see. We're going to write an AJAX request using JavaScript, and then we will grab the response from the server and update that on the page. So if you're in class, we went over the slides, but I can give you a basic overview of what AJAX will look like. Okay, for the exam, you'll want to know a few things. So you want to know what AJAX stands for, you want to know what JSON stands for, what XML stands for. Just a few slides here, you want to go over these on your own as well. AJAX is awesome because it's allowing us to update a web page without loading the entire page. It's also used to request data from servers and receive the data from the server. We can also send data to the server. So it's almost like the communication from the front end to the back end. If I have the front end and I need to connect it to my back end, then I'll use AJAX. That's one way. We could also use forms. So we saw on a form, I put the action and the method. The action is where it's going to, the method is how it's getting there. When I submit the form, it's going to go to my PHP code, and the PHP code will do something with it, most likely insert it into the database. Same with AJAX. So AJAX and forms are two ways to connect the front end and the back end. Now AJAX stands for Asynchronous JavaScript in XML. AJAX is not a programming language. We'll actually be using JavaScript to program the AJAX, but AJAX is basically a pre-built-in object. So it's like a library. Okay, I'm going to use this browser built-in library to send and receive data from a server. I can also dynamically display and update the DOM. AJAX is a little misleading because it has XML in the name. But a lot of times we don't even use XML to transport the data. A lot of times we use JSON or plain text, CSV. XML was one of the original ways to transport data, and that's why the name is AJAX. What's nice is the web page will be updated asynchronously. So when I make the AJAX request, the user can still use the website. They don't have to wait. In the old days, you would send a request, the web page would actually freeze, and you couldn't do anything. You couldn't scroll or do anything until the request came back. But with AJAX, it's happening in the background or asynchronously, and it's happening behind the scenes. So the user doesn't even feel the update while they're waiting. They click on it, they can still do what they need to do, and then the data comes and it will update parts of the page without reloading the entire page. So this is what it looks like. So an event occurs. So let's say I click on, I'm on Facebook, and I click on Get Friends. So now when I do a Get Friends, I need to create my XML HTTP request object. When you see this XML HTTP request, that's actually just AJAX. So I click on Get Friends, I create an AJAX object, and I go ahead and send the AJAX request. Now that's going to go through the internet, but what this should say here is AJAX. So I'm using AJAX. It's going to be an HTTP request, so it goes over the internet to the server. The server will receive that request and process the AJAX request. Once it processes the request, so let's say I'm getting my friends, it goes to the database, pulls all the friends, it's going to create the response and send the data back to the browser. So here comes the data through an AJAX request, so the server is sending it back. The AJAX request receives the process and the return data using JavaScript, and it's going to update that section of the page with the content that it received dynamically. So I click on Get Friends, I use AJAX, process it, the server processes it, sends back the data or the response, browser receives the friends and updates the page. So that's how it works. Or maybe I do a sign-in. I type my data, I click sign in, I create an AJAX request, I send the AJAX request, server receives it, checks the database to make sure my username and password is correct. If it is, it says, okay, go ahead and let them log in, sends back the response, and then I get to the home page. Okay, so this is, it says internet here, but what really I should say is AJAX. So AJAX is a way to communicate from the browser to the server. It's a way to connect the browser and the server, connect the front end and the back end. Okay, and here's a bunch of methods that we'll use. We'll create objects, we'll get the response headers, we're going to open a request, we're going to send the request. If I need to send data to the server, it takes one parameter. Here's some things that you want to know, like the different states of the server. The main one we use is for, which is the request is finished and the response is ready. We'll use the response text for strings. We'll use response XML for XML data. And here's some status codes you want to know. Some common ones like 200 is okay, 404 is forbidden, 403 is forbidden, 404 is not found. So if you ever go to a web page and you get a 404, maybe the file name changed or maybe the path changed to that file. 403 is maybe the permissions, you don't have the right permissions to load that page from the server. Okay, so you'll want to know some common codes for the exam. And with AJAX, we have the option to say true or false on asynchronous. Using asynchronous equal to false is not recommended. That's the whole point of an AJAX request. The whole point of an AJAX request is to send it asynchronously, so you don't have to wait for the server's response. So this, the user can keep using your page. So usually we don't say to not do asynchronous. We always say to use asynchronous. That way the user's the user experience is good. XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. It's used to it's designed to store and transport data. It's also human and machine readable. So if you open up, you'll actually be able to read it and understand what's going on. JSON, we know, stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's also a syntax for storing and exchanging data. And it's an easier to use alternative to XML. It's with key value pairs. So we've seen JSON before. We'll look at it again and we'll look at what XML is. Okay, continue on to the next video to look at the code for this lecture.